Recording started.
I'd like to thank MPIC for hosting the annual Winter ICT Educator Conference and for providing this opportunity to record the presentation to share out to a larger audience. MPIC has a lot of useful information on their website at mpic.org and has provided outstanding leadership, information, and support for the ICT community in California. In this presentation, we will provide you with an overview of the draft standards and with information that will help you understand how to align classroom instruction to the standards, pathways, and careers and industry certifications. We will give you an overview of the standards, how they were developed, and how courses can be aligned to help create an effective program of study. As background, one of the first changes we made was to rename our industry sector in California from information technology to the information and communication technologies sector to better represent how the sector has developed and evolved to include many interrelated disciplines. ICT is an umbrella term widely used outside the United States to encompass all rapidly emerging, evolving, and converging computer, software, networking, telecommunications, internet, programming, and information systems technologies. Computer hardware won't work without software, and the network is needed to connect them together. So while you can study each of these topic areas separately, it is also essential that you understand how they work together. The standards development team agreed to accept an offer from the engineering and design industry sector to take a pathway called Computer, Hardware, Electrical, and Network Engineering pathway to us because it included ICT-related subjects and merged the relevant content into the ICT sector. Where we had 4 pathways before in this sector, the team also agreed in a meeting in Folsom to merge the existing Media Support and Services pathway into 3 ICT pathways and named the 3 pathways Information Support and Services, Networking, and Software and Systems Development. Here's a pyramid that MPIC developed to help describe the levels of knowledge and skills. In preparing curriculum and courses, it's helpful for teachers and curriculum developers to consider the level of knowledge and skills they hope to teach. For example, everyone needs to know how to use technology. If you are teaching students how to use Microsoft Office products like Word, PowerPoint, or Excel, then you are teaching to the ICT user level. The ability to use computers and computer applications is essential 21st century skills that will help all students meet their college or career goals. Every student needs to be digitally literate and acquire knowledge and skills about computer science and technologies in high school to become career and college ready. Courses like Exploring Computer Science would be helpful to all students and would also function well as a foundation course for all ICT sector courses that concentrate in particular subjects like computer applications and support, web design and development, networking, and software and systems development. If you are teaching students on how to enable users to use technology by installing software or repairing a computer or setting up a network, then you are teaching to the ICT enabler level. If you are teaching students on fundamentals, engineering principles, and scientific concepts of how technology works, then you are teaching to the ICT research and development and creator level. Here's ICT industry pie. The instruction provided through the ICT sector pathways is valuable to all students because students who have ICT knowledge and skills will find employment opportunities in many industries. The ICT sector stands out as one of the top opportunities, with jobs projected to increase by 27%. The ICT sector will be the fastest growing career cluster through 2018. The ICT sector meets national criteria for high demand, high wage, and high skills and is reported to be the driving force of innovation behind the efficiency initiatives of all career clusters. school administrators should consider adopting a basic computer course like Exploring Computer Science as a foundation for the ICT sector courses and as a graduation requirement for all students. I mentioned Exploring Computer Science a couple times, and I want to just explain that this is a course that was developed in a partnership between the UCLA and Los Angeles Unified School District that was all funded by the National Science Foundation, and it was designed for students who don't typically have an opportunity to study the computer science lessons. So basically poverty areas, lots of African American and lots of Hispanic students. The curriculum was developed and it's available online, but it's a very good course. It's gotten national recognition for being a very good course, a basic course for all students. In developing the standards, I wanted to note that we're doing this together, and so I've made a list of the people here who've been involved as our initial team. We met in Folsom in May of last year, and they represent people from universities, from industry. Richard here is from Ohlone College, professor. Jacob here also was there in Folsom. As we talk generally about the framework of the sector and what are some of the big things we should consider in changing. So we had a very productive meeting. And in addition to that, Richard and Jacob and I had the assignment to write the standards or redraft the standards from what currently existed to what exists today. The other thing we did is, myself, I am not a teacher. I've never been a classroom teacher. My wife is, and so by osmosis, I know a lot about teaching and teacher attitudes. She's an administrator now. But I really have heard from the field that the teachers really should be involved in the process. And so from the very beginning, our intent was to make standards that were of great desire and use to teachers in the classroom. And so I have a network of about 800 classroom teachers that we reached out to on a couple of occasions to ask them, what do you think about these standards? How do you like the current standards? We shared out a copy of the draft standards and then solicited their feedback. And we remained open to that feedback for a long time. I'd like to personally commend both Richard and Jacob for their hard work and their attitudes in approaching the standards. They're very accomplished teachers, and so where I don't have the classroom teacher skills, these guys do. Many, many years. I'd like Richard to talk about his background just for a minute.
Sure. Thank you, Gary. As Gary said, I teach at Ohlone College here in the Bay Area. It's a California community college. I've been there for about 15 years, but I started teaching in high school. I had 4 years at a comprehensive high school. I volunteered to be the computer teacher because they needed someone to teach computers. That's what they call the class, and it was on Tandy, Radio Shack, Trash 80s, and lots changed since then. But an interest in computers by high school students has not changed. They're interested in technology. They're interested in all aspects of it. I moved actually from comprehensive high school, which I thought was somewhat missing the track. Most of the kids were in the college prep classes. The courses that I was interested in teaching, the computer, the hands-on, the classes were not as popular with the administration. So I actually moved to the ROP. I thought the ROP was a great way. That's here in California, our vocational technical training. I was an ROP teacher for 11 years. I started the first Novell networking certification training when Novell was, on top of the world in the 1980s and early 90s. We had high school kids get certified, and that experience led me to the natural transition where I learned that high school kids, even after ROP, really need more education. some can go to work right out of high school, and some are very skilled technically, but they really need that, extra edge. And so I went on to the community college. I've been there for the last 15 years.
So Richard, I think, was our most experienced teacher who had taught at different levels, and we really looked to him for a lot of leadership, and in particular the networking pathway is where he knew exactly what needed to happen and change. And so I appreciate his leadership a lot. And then also Jacob Walker has been an untiring advocate for standards, and I'll let him talk about himself a bit. But he's been an incredible part of the team in helping us with the process of updating, and just another remarkable educator who took a lot of extra time and is continuing to provide resources that will be of use down the road. So Jacob, a little bit about you.
Sure. I actually come from the adult education side of California Adult School. I worked for Twin Rivers Adult School, which is a fairly poor area, formerly Grant area in Sacramento. But I started my journey when I was a kid, so I definitely have empathy for kids who are wanting to be the computer nerds in the future of the world, because I really believe that ICT has a lot of that in it. The biggest part that I've taught all levels, or been involved in all levels of that tree, from obviously using computers. Been a technician for many years, from first internet provider in Placer County, and also done development work on various scales. So kind of a generalist in that way. I'm really believe in standards a whole bunch. I think it's really important we have the right standards. We work very hard to try to make the balance between what can be teachable and what industry needs. I'm a big fan of Peter Drucker, and he said that efficiency is doing things right, but effectiveness is actually doing the right thing. And that's important. If we want to stay a leader, California staying a leader in the world for our next generation, we need to make sure we do have the right standards that are going forward. And I think we're getting closer to that. As a researcher, I always want more research, but I think within the constraints we have, we've done a good job in that direction.
So we've been talking about the standards, but I don't think you've seen a copy of the standards yet. But I don't know. How many of you have seen a copy of the standards?
I should have printed that out.
Okay. For the listener, we have a link on the last slide to many resources where you'll find the standards. You'll be able to read them later in some depth at that time. But right now, it's also fair to say that these are draft standards, and we are still in the process. So we're doing this together. So I invite all of you who will take time to look at the standards and consider whether they are adequate or appropriate, to provide us feedback, because we still have an opportunity to revise the standards. I think they're in really good shape. We've had them vetted statewide a couple times, but we're always open, and we've had this attitude from the very beginning that we're open to hear from everyone and make changes that seem appropriate. But these are draft standards until they're officially approved, and next year sometime the state board will probably adopt them, and then they'll become our official standards. The standards are all, we have 3 pathways I mentioned earlier, and then we have what's called anchor standards, and the anchor standards are common foundation standards for all pathways, and so they actually supplement the pathways. So the anchor standards would apply to the information support and services pathway, the networking pathway, and also the software and systems development pathways.
Yeah, I was just going to add, the current standards that are approved right now were approved in 2005, written in 2003-04, and then approved by the state. And they are current standards here in California for K-12. And are part of the 15 CTE standards that are part of all K-12 curriculum.
Yeah, and so when
we're due for a change, right?
We're due for a change, and we have to have a vision of having standards that will persist over the next decade. And so that's in a sector where things change very quickly. It's a little difficult to do that. So we're looking for what students should know and be able to do in a fundamental way, and we will later release frameworks which will help provide guidance to teachers on how to implement these standards, which will then have more detail that makes sense to the classroom, I think.
I think one other motivation was to take the existing standards and change the language to make it more outcome-based, where it was more measurable. So the existing standards right now are not really measurable standards. So we did that as well.
One of the exciting things that we use in this process, especially for the whole ICT sector, is actually using emerging ICT technology as part of it. We put up a media wiki to be able to help with the collaboration piece of this. Now, that's the same software that Wikipedia uses. We didn't use it in the same way. First of all, it did require an account, and really only the three of us could actually edit it. But it did give very good revision control, having it something being public so that we could have it being very open to anybody who wants to get involved. And I encourage all of you to be able to go there, to be able to see the current draft standards, and also to be able to email us, and we are more than happy to put your comments verbatim in there. We don't really have it set up right now where we have an account, etc., because it's Wikipedia, or MediaWiki doesn't have that level of detail in its account portion. We also kind of use the hybrid system of using Microsoft Word and the MediaWiki together in the process so that all the official milestones were converted back to Word so we can get them out to everybody. So that was pretty exciting. I think we're probably the most open in our revisions and how the creation is of any of the standards that are being created by using the MediaWiki technology. So, getting on to our first pathway. There we go. The first pathway is information support and services. This is a very, very broad pathway. It focuses on ICT enablers in that model, but it also covers, to a degree, some of the high-end users. One thing that's important in California, while we were talking with teachers, there are high school programs that have maybe Microsoft Office specialist programs where they learn Office much more in depth than what a person may just normally do in many jobs. And so they wanted to make sure that they had a place to put that so they could get funding and have just in the model. So the challenge of writing these standards were to make them broad, to be able to fit everywhere from someone who, the next one, was like an office technician to a database administrator, because those are all support and services areas and all have similar skill sets, at least in the basics, that cover them. So this is kind of what you're seeing up here is a basic degree. Now, I'm going to go back to some of the major changes and new inclusions we did here. First of all, we did a lot of rewording. There's a crosswalk on the wiki. So if you're interested in seeing what the old standards are and the new one, each one has a link to the old standards, so it's easy to have people update curriculum, things like that. But we try to have more current terminology, more industry-based terminology, although that's hard because we also try to avoid buzzwords, and they're changing every week in there. We moved some of the old standards to the anchor standards. We thought that that was important, those anchor standards being able to go across all of our pathways. And also, in many ways, many of those anchor standards might be the standards that would be appropriate for any high school student to learn. So that's why we try to put more into the anchor standards and pull them out from the specific pathways, because they are the foundation for those and for many careers. We merged in some standards for media support. That was previously a pathway that was kind of like a multimedia one. It was a hard one to say whether it belonged in really the applied arts or whether it belonged with us, so we kind of split it up where they took, I think, maybe some of it and we moved it into here. Although recognizing that all, with YouTube and the way that all the different medias are coming together, I don't even know if we can call it multimedia anymore because it's just the way it is. We still use that terminology because it clarifies it, but everything's going to be video, audio, text, etc. So we did want to incorporate that into this area. And also, very importantly, we added more security to the standards. That is something that, with all the high-level things of Sony getting hacked and a whole bunch of other organizations these last few years, we think it's critical for everyone, especially in the ICT sector, to have a better understanding of what can be done security-wise to protect our nation and ourselves. So that was something that was added as meaning in there. Looking at how we could actually use this to create a sequence of courses, I know this is a little small on this, but if you're looking at the anchor standards, that would be very good for an introductory computer course. If we had, like, say, a 3-year program in a high school, or transition into high school to college program with articulation, would be like using software applications, operating system, basic standard, store, retrieve, and use information, stay up to date in an ever-changing technological environment. We also wanted that to be in here, not just what is existing now, but also to kind of make part of the standards the fact that we have to keep up. We have the challenge, again, of trying to have these probably last 10 years for the state, and for sure in 10 years it's going to look different, but at least that helps us. We also emphasize using mathematical and computational thinking. We think that this is an important part that is lost in a lot of traditional mathematics of understand Boolean logic and things of that sort, which is so important in today's connected world. So we've added that as part of the anchor. The core standards, I'm not going to go through all of them, but that's basically starting to understand how you can help people out. And then finally moving to the specializations, which are going to be your various certifications for the most part. It could be a college degree also, but this standard right here, we believe that the certifications, along with many colleges doing, community colleges doing these certifications with their associate programs intermixed, is kind of the general ending point, and then back to career. Kind of some examples here. If a person was to have a self-contained sequence in high school, 11th grade they could have their introduction to computers, and in 12th grade they could then be doing their A+ certification courses. If we were to look at a sequence of courses that would extend on into the college, we could start again with the first 2, and then move on into our Microsoft certifications in the year 1 and year 2 of college. Although, of course, there's many ways that this can be implemented. This is just an example. And colleges do it still very differently from each other. So you can also take a mini program with just 2 semesters. One thing that I want to emphasize, I know most of you are college instructors out here, but I want to emphasize also for the general public and high school teachers who may be listening to this, these standards are meant for a 3-year high school program. That was our job that we were given. We expect only a subset to be used if a high school does not have a full 3-year program, or there's not an articulation into a college, because it would be probably too much to try to cover everything in some of these, especially when I get to the more computer science standards later, that one especially. So let me turn this over to Richard.
Great, thank you, Jacob. So I focused my attention on the second pathway, the B pathway, the networking pathway. And I had an early start with Novell networking in my time. I do a lot of teaching in that as well. And I had sort of a selfish motivation too, teaching at the community college. I know I wanted to attract high school graduates directly to our program, sort of our farm system, and I wanted to make sure they had a good background coming in. So, and then too, the changes from community college to CSU are happening today as well. That the standards and the course descriptions are all being changed now. There's a new course numbering system here in California. There are now degrees in ICT at the four-year school level beyond just computer science. So there are networking and security courses and bachelor's degrees that are being developed. So we want to make sure there's an opportunity for transition for students after high school to work, but also all the way through university as well. So our networking pathway kind of also focuses on technicians, on ICT enablers in that same MPIC model. Some of the things that we looked at that I focused on was to apply language to the standards to help with measurability and to actually help teachers build courses. So use the standards. These are sort of objectives and outcomes. And I can fashion a course to make it match the standards, which is becoming a requirement. We broadened the focus of networking to include voice and video along with data. We've learned that ICT is more than just information technology. And it's more than just data. It's video, it's voice, it's all those things. We also were given the engineering sector, the CTE sector, sort of gladly gave us the computers repair and then also the networking engineering pathway. They weren't sure what to do with it. They were happy to give it to us. We knew what we could do with it and enjoyed taking that on. And then finally, we also added more security to that pathway as well. So some of the job titles, network technician, network administrator, network engineer, those are all things that schools here in California need to show. And for their CTE programs, they have to show that there is a capstone, there is an end certification, and industry has those. And we can match those with programs. So you can see some of the certifications that students can gain once they're done with their education. Same, developing a sequence of courses, the same anchor standards that Jacob talked about for the service and support are there for networking. We used to teach, I taught computers my first year. That was sometimes for many students the first class they ever had in computers in high school. Now they're learning in preschool, and my 7-year-old nephew has an iPod Touch he got from Santa. Somewhere else, I'm not sure. But anyway, there are course standards and specializations there too. And there's actually a lot of course material available that's there for resources that map to the standards that can help teachers build courses quickly and easily. So in the 11th grade or earlier, I see them taking the A+ computer repair course before and then doing what we have at several of our partner high schools, an introduction to network engineering that maps either to CompTIA's Network Plus or to Cisco Academy's CCEN certification. There's curriculum offered by both of those organizations to help develop that introduction to network engineering course. The program was steady. Obviously, I want those high school students to continue their education. We've found that ICT is a highly technical field, that while many high school students can go directly to work out of high school, many of them need more maturing, more technical training. They may want to continue after that network engineering course to take the CCNA classes or Security Plus or something like that at the community college, and maybe even finish up with CCNP courses in their second year of college. And they can graduate with an AS degree with great skills and great employability. I mean, there's opportunities for them. So this second 2-semester Introduction to Network Engineering course is something that I'm very fond of and encouraging. High schools can actually map this course to potential A to G requirements here in California. Those are sort of the sacred courses that high school students take because they are approved by UC and lead to college prep and can map that way as well. It can be done in a 2-semester course. That would be the capstone course, which is required out of CTE instruction here in California. And the third pathway.
Okay.
Back to Jacob.
Well, third pathway is software and systems development. This is really, in the MPIC model, it is the highest, the creator portion of it, or really what would be the traditional computer science, I mean, where all of this started from. Some of the major changes that we have here is that we reworded, again, a lot of the standards that were there to try to follow where industry is in doing this. I did a lot of talking to many people in many different fields and interviewing them and asking them, well, what do you need to know for your type of job? And so the way this kind of got structured in the end is there was about first five standards are kind of across all of computer science, across all of development work. And then the last standards that were in there, and as I think this slide right here will kind of show. Let me go too forward. Right here, you can specialize in different areas with some of the standards that are there. So we realize in computer science especially, it is such a broad spectrum now. Everywhere there's still a need for embedded programming that's doing devices. I mean, the iPad and all of that is just showing how much embedded programming is still coming back and that everything has a computer in it, even if it's a washing machine. So we said, well, that's still important. And at the same time, we have such high-level programming as a web developer who probably may never even need to know what a register is or a memory address to be able to do their programming job in the process, and has to understand a lot of other skill sets. So we try to have different standards that can be kind of mixed and matched at the end to accommodate those different kinds of skill sets. Also trying to have maybe some types of courses that would be exciting for students, even if there's not as many jobs, like 3D game programmer. Not as many jobs always out there, but a lot of great skills that a person can go into many computer science fields by understanding that. One of the major, going back here, we added, again, more of the media to this. We thought that was important, and that standard was going away, or that pathway. All the web development came into this pathway. Databases, we thought that databases are less happening of people creating the database as a user. They used to be more on the support side, and that they're becoming more specialized with a database developer. But they are still critical, and I was a big believer that databases are an amazing opportunity for many students to have good jobs that aren't oftentimes thought about at the high school level. And then, of course, devices, robotics, and we added the development of intelligent computing, artificial intelligence. We've been talking about it for years. I mean, it's starting to come to fruition. We need to start to be able to think about how we're going to deal with this in the job market and also in society. Because if you look at some of the stuff Stanford's doing of what they can get their robots to do, what's happening with drones flying over other countries, how much of it's artificial intelligence and how much of it is a human controlling it from the data, it's here. And we need to have that. It's something we're talking about, and that's why that was added as those standards. Several ways of creating a sequence of courses. Again, we have the anchor standards that would be in everything, the core standards, and then, like I said, those last 5 of various things would be specialized areas. And I believe in a 3-year program, if it was sufficient at a high school, you could cover all the standards, although most likely, most of the time they would, once you get into the specialized area, you might leave some of those out as you just get into what's important for that kind of thing. So for example, a web developer, again, is probably not going to be dealing as much on the device level. Although, who knows, they may also have some artificial intelligence stuff that is done there. We see automated customer service that's happening on web pages and things like that, which is usually, to me, pretty awful right now how they work out there doing those. But program those in the 1990s, you know, Elvis and then we got one of them to say, how are you doing? Oh well. Either case, creating the sequence of courses, that's kind of the way that it was. Some examples of this, In 9th grade, if you started with an introduction to computers or applications. In 10th grade, if you move up a little bit more to an exploring computer science, so you're going more the computer science realm, although exploring computer science could also be an introductory course there. And then jumping on that and actually getting like an AP Computer Science A in your 11th grade even, let's say, where you're building on top of that, and in 12th grade having a full specialization either in web development or, let's say, robotics, or a variety of ways. And you could possibly maybe even cover both of those if you did it in that sequence. Now, most high schools would not probably have this. Most of them we know don't have the budget to have a 4-year program. It'd be wonderful if they did, but we want to at least have it so that was an opportunity here. Looking at how we can do a program of study, very similar 11th grade, starting with exploring computer science, and then 12th grade, having the AP Computer Science so they can get their credit already jumping into college, and then being able to go into a traditional computer science degree. And again, this is much more focused on the degree aspect as opposed to certifications. There's not as many certifications out there, and still it seems that the degree is the most recognized way of proving it. Either that or just, going out and doing it, Bill Gates or Facebook. So, but they're both recognized ways of getting jobs. And you could also do a smaller one. Let's say in web development. There's still web development that's not all programmer-based. Still HTML and with more style sheets and more stuff involved than the early days of the web. But you could use a subset of the standards in a high school to just have a 1-year program that focuses more on just the basics of web page design. So it's kind of I wouldn't say completely a pick and choose, but we wanted to have it modular in that it could be applied best in the settings that they're going into and help give some direction. So.
Yeah, so I'd like to conclude our presentation by going over these few points with you. California is a very diverse state, and it's also a local control state, meaning that the local school districts, over 1,000, decide the curriculum, decide the courses, and that will also come to the teacher in the classroom, having, in my mind, the most important role of taking a curriculum and designing the lesson plans, delivering instruction. And it's in the classroom that we will see the greatest impact on students. Understanding that we have some communities in California that are very wealthy and well-resourced, the Silicon Valley area, for example. Students in those schools are very likely to be taking college-level courses. There are other areas of the state which are highly impacted with poverty, where there are dysfunctional families. Students there struggle because they don't have the same community support or resources, or their families aren't together. Maybe dad's in prison. So as a public school system, we have to serve all students. And so the challenge at the local level is to design courses that will best serve your community, and to have them student-centered and to have them meaningful. And so it's difficult to say there's one best way or there's one course that will work for you. At the same time, we have in our sector a very important task of aligning our curriculum with the community college, because in the ICT sector, the community college plays a tremendous role in continuing the education. And I would think most of our ICT capstone courses would be at a community college. And so the communication has to exist. We need to work on this as a educator community. We need to have high schools teachers talk with teachers at the community college. And there's been some studies out where fault has been placed at both the high school and community college levels, and lacking alignment, there's a tremendous public waste. If students come and they're not adequately prepared, then remediation happens at the community college, and that's an extra cost. And so you could look back to K-12 and say, hey, why are you sending us these kids that aren't prepared to take my course? Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if you've had time to talk to them, or if you've given them suggestions, or if you've said, this is what we're offering at our college. And an ideal preparation would be if they had this particular set of knowledge and skills. And oh, by the way, are you delivering them in your courses? So having that kind of connection at the local level is really critical to improving our education in California. So that's what I would encourage the classroom teachers to do, is to look at what they're offering now and to just reflect and ask themselves, am I currently teaching to the standards? We did an IT summit last year, and we went to De Anza College, and we had a little meeting before the summit with the teachers, the faculty there, and one of the faculty said, we need to know, when do we stop teaching this? We've been teaching the same thing over and over, and has the world moved on, or should we still be teaching this particular product? And so that's an important question. And it's a particular challenge in our sector because technology is moving so quickly. And at the high school level, again, it depends on the local area. I've seen keyboarding classes at the community college level, and in some cases that's appropriate. That's valuable skill for someone to have. But in a globally competitive society and economy, we have to ask ourselves, teachers do, am I teaching enough rigor? Am I teaching to the knowledge and skills that will help my students reach their academic and career goals? And so this is really up to the teachers to reflect. No one's going to do it for you. If you keep teaching what you taught last year, then eventually it's not going to be relevant. And so I would encourage all the teachers to look at the new standards, the draft standards, and look at what they're currently teaching and saying, am I really providing the kind of service and education that I should be to enable the students? The other thing would be, if you receive Carl Perkins funding, then there's some responsibility for you to have a sequence of courses and a program of study. And so it would be good for you to look at not only what you're teaching, but how this aligns with other courses and opportunities, to give the students a clear pathway. And so we become shepherds of the students, and I would encourage the high school teachers to work with their counselors and with their site administration to question what you're currently providing, depending on where you're at in the state and the local job market. Take time and have conversation at your school site, and then go to the community college and continue that conversation so that what you're teaching is relevant and aligned and appropriate. It's up to the classroom teachers, I believe. It's your responsibility to do this. So that's important. In the coming year, I'm going to try to work to set up opportunities where we can fund meetings with high schools and community colleges and administrators to have this kind of conversation. Yes, we have the advanced placement courses. There's really only 67 schools that offer it currently. But for a consumer, for a parent or a student, there are some ways in high school where you can get an AA degree by the time you graduate high school through dual enrollment opportunities and other ways of delivering service. So this is another thing I would encourage, is do what we can to organize our instruction and our programs so that we're serving the needs and the interest of the students, to help move them on to college, have them spend some time at the college and get those higher level skills that will lead to those really high level paying jobs that are available out there. So this concludes the presentation, and on behalf of the Standards Writings team, I want to thank you for all you're doing to help students learn, and again, we welcome your review and input of the standards. Thank you very much.